He will remain. He will remain. He has always.
Good morning, everybody. We made it through Easter with a bunch of snow. Did we not get a bunch of snow? Wasn't that the craziest thing? And I had to drive to St. Louis after that. And I mean, we didn't even get to Hannibal. There wasn't hardly any snow at all. You know, it's just, we were right on the borderline of a lot of snow. It was just a crazy, crazy thing. But I welcome everybody. We're just starting a new series called The Grind, Persevering in a tough world that's out there. And we just read the whole story of Paul, you know, becoming, you know, from Saul to Paul, and that whole journey and what that looks like to persevere. And we just went through that. And our whole topic today is going to be centered on suffering and calling. That's really what we're talking about, especially this week after Easter, the first week after Easter. I mean, because that's always the question. All right, Jesus saved us. Now what do we do? What's next? That's the $1 million question. What do we do from this point forward in our lives? And that's always the challenge. And if we're truly going to follow Christ, if we're truly going to be Christians, that's not going to come without pain. That's not going to come without suffering in our life. We're going to have some real challenges as it relates to that. So that's my question to you. Let's start with that question. You know, has your life been radically changed by your relationship with Jesus Christ? That's a real great question, because we all come to Jesus in different ways. And Jane, who always does a beautiful job with the children's sermon, was trying to convey that message. That hopefully that we grow up with that influence of Christ in our life through biblical study, through Sunday school, and we really have a foundation for faith. But that isn't the case for everybody. And even though we have that sometimes growing up, it doesn't mean that's what's going to materialize in our life. And that was my case. Last week I shared with you that, you know, growing up, first grade through fourth grade, I went to a Catholic school. Went to Mass every day. I loved going to church. I loved everything about it. It definitely planted a seed of faith in my life. No question about it. We'd go to my sister's house. I put on the big headphones. I listened to Jesus Christ Superstar. I don't know if anybody took time to watch that last week on NBC, but that was phenomenal. It was just a phenomenal reenactment of live broadcast of Jesus Christ Superstar. And if you haven't had a chance to watch that, I would encourage you to go on YouTube or on demand or whatever you have for a TV provider, or get somebody to give it to you on DVD and watch it, because it's incredible. It'll be something that you'll keep as part of your collection, I can promise you, forever. It was just beautiful, and it was very well done. But the message today is, you know, how do we persevere in that time of, you know, how do we overcome the challenges of being a believer? And for me, you know, when I asked that question, how did you come to know Christ? Did you have that one moment that you can look back and point to in your life and go, that was the moment? And not everybody has that in their life, but I do. You know, I can look back to those early days and say that's where the seed was planted, no question about it. That's where the seed of faith was planted for me. But it didn't really blossom then, because I chose to go, you know, the way of the dark side, and I lived in that life for a long time. And at the age of 21, almost 22, it's really where I came to the end of myself. And I really sincerely asked Jesus into my life. That was the first time that happened in my life. It was the most sincere thing. And it truly just came to the end of myself. But for most of us, when we come to the end of ourselves, pretending this is the white flag, you know, we come to that place in life where we finally just wave the flag and say, I'm done. I surrender. But like most of us, and myself included, I immediately, it doesn't take me long to recoup, and I grab that flag back and surrender. And my life journey seems to be more like this. I surrender just a little bit at a time. And I go through life, and something else happens in my life, and I'll surrender a little bit more. But I still desperately want to hang on to this right to myself. And I planted that flag as far back as I can constantly remember. I'm going to do what I want, how I want, and if you don't like it, including you, God, too bad. And that's the way it's going to be. And that's how I journeyed out through life. And so we come to this place in our life just like Paul did, because that's what Paul did. If you look at the patriarchs in Scripture, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Paul, Moses, who we talked all fall about, and their character and how bold they were, you know, in their journey, regardless if it was for the dark side or the light, it didn't matter. They were bold. They were relentless in their faith, and I think that's why God chose them to do what they did. Because here's Paul, a person who was sold out to cause harassment for the church. I'm going to destroy the Christian church. I don't care what it takes. I mean, he went above and beyond what the Jewish authorities even gave him the authority to do. Paul went above that to do whatever he could to put an end to Christianity. And the Lord met him where he was at. And that was a beautiful thing. He met him where he was at on the road to Damascus, and blinds him and puts him to the ground. And he asked him that question, Saul, Saul, why are you harassing me? And he asked the question back, is that you, Lord? Is that really you? And Jesus reveals to him who it is. This is Jesus Christ, the one that you're harassing. And he blinds him for 3 days, really as a point, as far as I can tell, to really humble Paul, to let him know that I'm God and you're not. And maybe you've had that experience in your own life where you come to that place where you realize that God's showing you or proving to you that he is God and you're not. And that was his moment for Paul. And he kept him that way for a while. And we know as we study the book of Paul and we study his life that he reveals in Scripture that he had a thorn in his side, although he never tells us what it is. He had a thorn in his side, some kind of sin, character defect, hang-up of some type that afflicted him his entire life, that he could never shake it. He even asked for it to be removed, and God said, I'm not going to remove it. It was like keeping Paul right size. And maybe you had that same affliction in your life. You just seem to can't get past it. But we start this faith journey. If we're really going to walk out after we celebrated the resurrection last week, and we're really going to walk out the door and go live to be a Christian, really model what Jesus' life looks like, it's not going to be without pain, and it's not going to be without suffering. And for me, that was a hard road. That was a hard place to get to, because at age 22, going on 22, where I was at in my life, living most of all my teenage life, and how I'm into my 20s, living it in the dark, my life looked like this. I had one foot in the light, and I had one foot in the dark, and I was stuck in the middle. I had too much light in my life to enjoy the dark. I had too much dark in my life to enjoy the light, and I was just caught in the middle. There's a great praise song by Casting Crowns called Caught in the Middle. And that's exactly that whole time frame. And that can last for a long time for people, that you're just stuck. You're still trying to live this old life, trying to have a little bit of pleasure in it. At the same time, you're trying to walk this Christian life, this spiritual life, and the two just collide. And we get caught in the middle. And I was caught in the middle for a long time. I was 21. All I knew was the dark side. I had a lot of dark friends. Not that they were all bad people, but they just didn't have any faith. They weren't living a Christ-centered life. They were just living in the dark. I was still trying to hang around them and maybe make some new friends, and I was just stuck. And I can remember one of the first Bibles I had. I didn't have the car at the time, and so I got rides a lot of places, and I got a ride to somebody's house, and I had this Bible with me, and this Bible had a book cover on it that somebody gave me. I don't even know where I even got the Bible cover, but it was just a cloth Bible cover, and it had popsicle sticks for a cross. It was pretty cheesy looking, but I had it. It's all I had. And I went to this buddy's house, or it was a group of guys going to be there, and I was too embarrassed to bring this book in. So I got to get rid of it. I got to dish it, but I don't want to. But I respect it, so I don't want to just trash it. So I tried to hide it under a bush the best I could. Part of it was sticking out, and I went into the house and I hung out with these guys for about an hour or so, and then finally their mom come home. It was at a dude's house, and his mom come home, and she found the book. Walked into the house, saw it, brings it in the house, says, "Hey, did somebody lose a book?" And immediately, I rushed to the book. I got to get it before they could even ask me any questions. And I finally get it. And they asked me, "Well, what's that book?" And I'm hiding the popsicle sticks. I had no way I'd let them see that cheesy popsicle sticks. And I mumbled it out. They said, "What? What is it?" I said, "Bible." Finally I got it out. It was a Bible. And they, of course, they harassed me about it. "Oh, we following Jesus now." I can't remember all the jabs that they gave me, but they gave me a lot of jabs. And that's the friction, that transition of moving from that to living a Christian life. So it was a process for me to walk through that journey through life, to really endure what it meant to follow Jesus, and then the friction that's going to come with it, because there's going to be friction. Every one of us are going to have it. And here's how it looks in today's times. This is how I see it played out a lot of times. So maybe you have the tradition at your house, you always pray before meals. We do that at my house. Always do that. And but then you go out to public, or you have friends over, or you go to somebody else's house, and it's time to eat, and everybody's sitting around kind of grabbing their forks and not sure what to do, and you're not sure whether you're supposed to pray or not pray. You don't want to We'll say things like, "Well, we don't want to make people uncomfortable," but the reality is we don't want to be uncomfortable. It's that friction. We're trying to live out our faith, so we easily compromise the things that we say we value the most. We just quickly don't do them and just go through life. And it has an effect on our life. And so there's many things that we can do like that challenge our faith. It could be how you set up your cubicle, or your desk at work, or your office, or your car. Or do you hide things? Do you hide your Bible underneath your seat so nobody will see it? Do you keep Christian artifacts or any symbols of Christ, in your life that you just want to hide, or you don't want to have any discussion about it because you don't want to get drawn into some debate, or somebody who's an atheist or agnostic challenge your faith? So you avoid those conversations. Or you know somebody's hurting, and you really know they need somebody to pray for them, but you just can't wrestle the courage to go, would you just want me to pray with you? Because of that tension that he gives us in our life. And these are the things that Jesus promised his disciples that would happen. And so you think about our life and what we're called to do, and I think a lot of the pressure that Christians put on themselves, and I see it all the time, I've seen it for decades now, is that Christians go through life, and somehow or another we got this call in our life that it's, and I think it's misconstrued, but we take it as that my job as a Christian is to convert people. That I'm supposed to go out in the world and convert unbelievers into believers, and that's my job. When we say it sometimes in our mission statement, that the Methodist mission statement is to make disciples for Jesus Christ for what? The transformation of the world. But what does it really look like to make a disciple? Do we just convert them? I mean, Jesus walked with the apostles for 3 years. So it wasn't an overnight process. You just snap them into obedience overnight. I mean, they walked with him for 3 years, and as we talked during the resurrection, even after the resurrection, they still doubted. They didn't even show up to the grave. There's a woman that went and showed up at the tomb. They had enough faith to at least go check it out. But the guys were hiding up in some loft somewhere, hoping that they didn't get found out. And that's after walking with Jesus for 3 years. So, but I think we put this pressure on ourselves. I see it all the time. It's like, we got to convert, it's almost like a sales contest. It's like a job description. Like, my job is to go out into the world. If you're not saved through guilt and shame, the threat of hell or something, an old tactic that may have worked back in the 70s or the 50s or the 60s, it's not reality anymore in the world that we live in. And that's not how Jesus done things. But I think we put that pressure on ourselves that if I'm going to lay myself out there to be a believer, if I'm going to be a Christian, that somehow or another it's going to engage this conversation, a conversation maybe I'm not really too comfortable of having, so I just don't have the conversation. But that's not what Jesus did, and that's not what we're called to do. And you hear me say it all the time, our job as believers is to meet people right where they're at. Wherever they're at in life is where we're supposed to meet them, and then help them take the next steps on their spiritual journey. But ultimately, it's just to love them. It's not to convert them. My faith is legit. If it's authentic, it'll be contagious enough that people will want to ask me questions about why do you got so much joy in your life? Why are you living the life that you have? They'll want to ask me those questions themselves. Just I'm living my life, but it's not going to come from some kind of guilt trip that, hey man, you don't have Jesus in your life, you're going to hell. But I see it portrayed. I mean, I go to a handful of NASCAR races. Susie and I, the last one went to, Daytona 500. Right on the street corner, big bullhorn, just like out of the Blues Brothers. Remember the Blues Brothers? They had that big megaphone in their car going around, welcome everybody to the show. I mean, it was like that. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ, you're going to hell. And that's what they're broadcasting from the street corners. Hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into NASCAR. Every time I walk by them, I go, how's it going today? They just don't know what to say. I mean, they're just almost befuddled with even how to respond to that. But they are sold out that this is the way that they're supposed to carry out the message of Christ, and it's really not. We're supposed to just meet people where they're at. And but I think if we don't have a true perception of that, and we got this idea that we're supposed to somehow or another be responsible for converting somebody, and if I meet Jim and Jim's not a Christian, I don't convert him, then I failed Jim. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. Because your job is just to meet Jim where he's at and just to love him for who he is. I mean, that's the challenge that we're faced with. So I don't know where you're at with that, but I hope that you get that corrected and learn to meet people right where they're at. And that changes the whole view of what discipleship's all about. Because if that's all I'm called to do is just love people and meet them where I'm at, who are you walking next to today that you can be loving on? That you can be discipling? I mean, Jesus discipled these guys for 3 years. So, if you're just getting started, it might take years before somebody leads them. You might not be the person that brings them all the way in and delivers them to the altar. But you may be the one who plants the seed, or as the parable of the sower goes, you may be the one who comes along and waters it, or you may be the one who nurtures it, or maybe, if you're lucky enough, you get to do all three in somebody's life. But I can promise you, I've won a lot more people's lives over for Christ through just loving them and meeting them where they're at, by far than blasting some megaphone of what they need in their life and how they need to live their life. All I can do is give testimony of what God's done in my life. That is the ultimate story. But if we look at Paul's life, and that's really what Paul went out to do. He met people where they're at. And you got to remember, Paul was challenged. Look at the challenges Paul faced. Here he is, the Antichrist. He's out destroying Christians. Everybody knew he was. And all of a sudden, days later, a week later, he's flipped completely the other direction. Now he's out telling people, hey, man, you got to follow Jesus. I'm like, dude, you were just out slaughtering them and putting them in jail last week. What gives? And he's trying to show me, he was definitely facing a lot of friction with that. You look at Jesus himself. Remember one of the apostles that he went to find him, and they said, hey, you got to come and meet Jesus. They go, he's from Nazareth. What did the apostles say? Does anything good come from Nazareth? I mean, they were right away throwing him under the bus. I mean, immediately were. And his own family, his own brothers, his own sisters, people that lived with him in Nazareth were saying, isn't this the carpenter's son? You know, why are we listening to this guy? And what's Jesus say? You know, even a prophet's not welcome in his own country. So look at the people who went before you. Some pretty awesome people that faced all kinds of friction. And they're telling us if we're going to go out and live a Christian life, that, you know, get ready. You're called to do it. You're called to go out into the world and be the light to the world, but you're also going to suffer in the process. But we're going to talk about that some more in a minute. But that's what we're called. And we live in a society now. I mean, we got all these millennials. I don't know if we have millennials in here with us. I'm sure we do. But these are people that were born between 82 and 2002. I got 5 of them in my household. And they call it the me generation. You know, they wear T-shirts that say,
He will